I'm Mary Morris. I'm the Chair of the Northern Territory Department of Health and Menzies School of Health Research, HREC. I would like to open with an acknowledgement to the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, which are the Larrakia people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and future. And I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders online today. Thank you for inviting us to present to you. This is a very important part of what we do as a HREC and very important to us in the Northern Territory. So we'll introduce ourselves and then we'll continue with the presentation. So I'll hand over to Jackie.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me today. I'm Jackie Adams, an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander representative on the Aboriginal Ethics Subcommittee, and I've been on the committee for 2 years.
Hi, I'm Michelle Matz, and I'm the Manager of Ethics up here in the Northern Territory, well, the top end. And thank you for inviting us. We're very happy to be here.
Next slide.
Next slide. Next slide, Director. Yeah, no, next slide.
Oh, next slide.
Sorry.
Right.
Here we go.
So we'd like to start the presentation by also acknowledging that when we refer to Aboriginal people, we are referring to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. So given the 30% of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people is the population within the Northern Territory, we acknowledge that the majority of the research that is done in the Northern Territory will impact on or involve in some way Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. The Aboriginal Ethics Subcommittee is very important because of that fact, but also because, you know, we want to ensure, like Andrew just said before us, that there's a culturally safe space for Aboriginal people to meet and discuss ethical issues that can affect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the conduct of research. Particularly, we want, as a committee, we focus on community engagement. What's the process and what's the process for implementation and feedback? The participant information sheet and consent form is a language understood by all. It can't be too clinical, it can't be too medical, it can't be too jargon. It's got to be applicable and understood by the people that will be participating in the research and also the people that will be reading the research outcomes. And most importantly, which we'll go into later, the 6 core values must be met. And those values demonstrate engagement and respect for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, their culture and their knowledge.
Move on to the next slide. So this is more from the administrative side. The Aboriginal Ethics Subcommittee is, this is sort of a slide on the composition that we, you know, aim to achieve, which is not always achieved, but we do have a bit of flexibility with the membership to sort of cater for what the sort of current situation is. And I must say the past probably 18 months since the COVID pandemic, we have had, you know, some issues with recruitment, particularly I think members from community. We have actually now implemented the Zoom sort of option, which has been great. But yeah, we have had a few issues of late with recruitment, but we do have a nice committee at the moment with a nice mix of people from varying backgrounds, so it's great. So we're primarily looking for a person with experience in health delivery, which we do have. We have an AHP, an Aboriginal health practitioner, on our committee. A person with experience in health research. We have Jackie. We also have another couple of people that are involved in research. A person with experience in community engagement. We have a couple of people that sort of work in community and are quite sort of familiar with that environment. A community member or elder who's not engaged in research or service delivery. We don't currently have this person, but we're always looking to recruit. So if anyone's interested, let us know. We also have a non-voting member who is a scientific advisor. So this person has been on the Aboriginal Ethics Subcommittee for quite a few years, and she's quite amazing. And she's there to assist with any sort of I guess scientific methodological issues that the other members may not be clear on, and to give an explanation of those issues if needed. She's non-voting, but she's fantastic, and she assists with reviews of the applications. So, yeah. All of that information is available in our terms of reference, which is on our website as well. We've got the website details at the end, but yeah, we'll go on from here. So I think this is just around process. So the Aboriginal Ethics Subcommittee meets 10 times per year, which is the same as our HREC, and they meet the week before the HREC. The committee members receive the applications about 10 days before the meeting, or up to, I think, probably more likely 2 weeks actually. As soon as we can get them to them, because we respect, the need to have a bit of time to review them. Most of the applications we receive in the Northern Territory will involve research with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So I would guess that 98% of what we receive will have to go through the Aboriginal Ethics Subcommittee. So they do quite a lot of work. We designed a specific checklist, which we can make available to people if they'd like, that attempts to draw the focus to the issues that Jackie was talking about earlier, because that is sort of the value of this committee. We value their input in specific Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander issues with participating in research. So then going back to the administration, so the comments from the Aboriginal Ethics Subcommittee are compiled into minutes, and they are then tabled at the HREC meeting the following week. And we, on a rotational basis, we have a member from the Aboriginal Ethics Subcommittee attend the HREC meeting. And, we have great discussion between, that person and committee members around the issues that they've raised. And in conclusion of this slide, the Aboriginal Ethics Subcommittee has the power of veto. So anything that they strongly believe in, if they don't believe the project should be approved, or there's certain issues that they don't agree with, those issues are respected.
So this is what the Aboriginal Ethics Subcommittee aims to achieve. And we know that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in general have been researched a lot. We need to ensure that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are at the table, that we're a part of the narrative, and that we're actually leading where we should be. But most importantly, for researchers, we want to ensure that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are being afforded the respect as First Nations of this country, as the oldest living culture in the world. So the 6 core values are very important. And Andrew mentioned them before, and we'll talk about them a little bit further. But I guess as a member of the committee, which is a formal mechanism, versus just a group of us sitting around talking. And, as Michelle said, our opinion, our assessment counts. And the 6 core values is a key focus of what we look at in terms of whether that respect, understanding and value of knowledge of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples can actually be demonstrated knowledge by the researcher. And ultimately, we want to know that research projects involving Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples will benefit Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. It's not a one-way street. You don't just take information. There has to be benefit. It has to be reciprocal. So these are the 6 core values. I always get this word wrong, so bear with me. Reciprocity, mutual benefit, equity, cultural continuity, responsibility, respect, which all make up spirit and integrity. And one call from the Aboriginal Ethics Subcommittee is that we use the most up-to-date forms when putting in applications. The values have changed slightly over the years, and these are the values that we are currently assessing against. And the form will actually give you definitions against them. So it's pretty hard to get it wrong if you know what you're doing and you know the space that you're working within. So it's really important when you respond to the 6 core values that you demonstrate knowledge of and the respect for knowledge and involvement of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and that the research will be implemented in a respectful, collaborative, beneficial, and appropriate way for the people and the communities that are involved and that will benefit from it.
The Aboriginal Ethics Subcommittee is a group of people with such diversity in experience and opinions who we empower to examine research within a culturally appropriate context. And there's a lot of things that we ask of the Aboriginal Ethics Committee, but most importantly, we do empower them. And we ask them to look at things like the research design, the aims, the methods, are they appropriate? We often see applications come to us where they just tack on the word Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander without any justification. And that's something that the Aboriginal Ethics Committee is very clear that that's not going to happen. So the design and the aims, the literature needs to address Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander needs and justify why you would use Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander participants. They look at the researchers, they make sure that there is an Aboriginal voice in all aspects of the research. And we will often suggest back to the research team that they need to go back and get some Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander researchers on the team, not as tokens, but as genuine members of the research team. We also look to see if there is a benefit to the community. So what are the researchers leaving behind that is of benefit? What are they doing that's adding value to the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander participants and or to the community? And very, very clear community and stakeholder consultation has to be demonstrated, and projects will be vetoed if they cannot demonstrate community and stakeholder consultation.
Please.
So recruitment of participants is important. It's not just about the researcher saying, I want to talk to Jackie and her crew, so therefore they will talk to me. There's a process in understanding the participants, what the research is, all those things we've just said. So it's really relevant also to ensure that, as Mary said, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and organisations who also benefit from the research are involved in that process. And that there's, where there can be, that there's letters of support or there's evidence that organisations and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are supporting this piece of work. And this is really important for the researchers as well, because you don't want to be wasting your time doing something that doesn't go anywhere. There's got to be benefit to everybody. In terms of consent, this is really important. As I said, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have generally been researched a lot. So we also need to make sure that there is consent, that people are willingly giving their information on the understanding that they know where it's going, how it's going to be used, how they will get that information back. So it needs to be clear and also itemised where it can. So not just a blanket consent, I'll do anything for this piece of research. What pieces of consent are you asking for as it relates to that research? We see a lot of documents that are very wordy, that don't necessarily give us clarity or make much sense to us. And we've seen some brilliant flip charts or even brilliant pictorials that are 10 times more effective than the words on the page. So again, as researchers and others will know, it's about picking your audience and targeting your information to that audience. And I know there's a balance between getting the application in and making sure that it's technically correct, but you should never also lose sight of the participants and who you will be talking to, who you will be getting the consent from, who is this research really going to benefit. So the language has to be appropriate. There has to be access to interpreters if needed. It needs to be clear about what that access to interpreters is. So again, it's a demonstration of, it's not just people can access interpreters if they want them. If you're going to a remote Aboriginal community in the top end of Darwin, of the Northern Territory, you know that most people in that community, English is a second, third, fourth language. So you're going to have to know where you're going to get interpreters from or how you're going to utilise the local resources to provide that interpretation. So I can't stress enough how important that informed consent is. And just going back to the committee itself, I guess us as participants, you know, collectively, we have a wealth of knowledge around the table, and we can collectively identify where we think a project won't work, or where a project will be amazing for everyone involved. And I guess that's our role, is to make sure that as many of the projects as possible will be amazing.
Yeah. So next slide. So back to the admin nerd, Michelle. So this is our workflow diagrams, quite simplistic, but you can see how we start with obviously with a submission. We then sort of delegate to different sort of streams. So we have our low negligible risk going to the left. Other than low negligible risk, which will end up going to the for full review. So if you look at going to the left, we go low negligible risk. If it's low enough and negligible enough risk, it'll go straight to the chair, Mary. Should it be, you know, not quite low enough risk, we'll then send it to our what we call our fast track committee, which meets out of session by email. And that includes an Aboriginal Ethics Subcommittee representative. So we ensure that there's the oversight from that committee through that mechanism. Then we have our normal, which will eventually go through to the main HREC. So that'll go to our subcommittees. We also have a qualitative ethics subcommittee. So it'll go to that first. The next day it goes to our Aboriginal Ethics Subcommittee. It then feeds into our main committee meeting. And as we said before, which has the Aboriginal Ethics Subcommittee has power of veto in that, you know, at that point. And then obviously correspondence to the researcher. Now we're a national certified national mutual acceptance committee. We have that process as well. And where we see not accepted, that would be the triggers for the Northern Territory have been, what's the word, triggered? Which if you look on our website, I won't go through them now, but they're mainly around the sort of targeting of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people. So we would, in the case of an application that is targeting this population, we would not accept it through the National Mutual Acceptance Scheme and would then send it back through the other process. So, and then obviously if we do accept NMA from another state and approve it, it would, you know, go on normally. So that's it for us today. I hope you enjoyed our presentation. The next slide is our contact details and our website, which has got lots of information on tackling, applying in the Northern Territory and ensuring respect for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in your application and in your research. So thank you.
Thank you.